Welcome to the therapy room. A place where psychology becomes understanding, and understanding becomes healing. I'm a psychologist passionate about bringing psychology closer to people in a way that feels human, emotional, cinematic, and deeply understandable. And today, I want to ask you a question. Why is love so hard? Not impossible. Not rare. Hard. Because despite living in the most connected era in human history, millions of people feel lonelier than ever before. We can send messages across the world in seconds. We can meet people with a swipe. We can stay connected 24 hours a day. And yet something feels broken. Relationships seem more fragile. Commitment feels more frightening. Trust feels harder to build. And genuine intimacy often feels out of reach. Many people spend years searching for love only to find themselves disappointed, confused, or heartbroken. Others enter relationships hoping to finally feel complete, only to discover that something is still missing. Perhaps you've experienced this yourself. Maybe you've loved someone deeply and watched the relationship slowly fall apart. Maybe you've been hurt. Maybe you've been betrayed. Maybe you've wondered why something that seems so natural can become so painful. Or maybe you're still searching. Still hoping. Still trying to understand why finding and keeping love feels so much more complicated than it should. If any of this resonates with you, I want you to stay until the end of this conversation. And I'd love for you to leave a comment below. What do you think is the biggest challenge facing modern relationships today? Is it trust? Communication? Commitment? Loneliness? Or something else entirely? Because today's discussion may challenge many of the assumptions we've been taught about love. And the person guiding us through this journey is Erich Fromm, one of the most insightful psychologists and philosophers of the 20th century. A man who wrote a book that remains astonishingly relevant nearly 70 years later. A book called The Art of Loving. Now, when most people think about love, they think about feelings. Chemistry. Attraction. Romance. Luck. Finding the right person. But Fromm believed that society had misunderstood love in a very important way. He believed most people approach love as if the problem is finding someone who will love them. Someone attractive enough. Someone compatible enough. Someone special enough. Someone who will finally make them feel complete. In other words, people spend enormous amounts of time asking, how do I become loved? Instead of asking, how do I learn to love? That distinction may sound small. But according to Fromm, it changes everything. Because he argued that love is not primarily a feeling. Love is not something that simply happens to us. Love is not a magical force that appears when we meet the right person. Love is an art. And like any art, it requires practice. Discipline. Patience. Knowledge. Effort. Imagine someone saying, I want to become a great musician. But refusing to study music. Refusing to practice. Refusing to learn. We would immediately recognize the contradiction. Yet many people approach love exactly this way. They want extraordinary relationships. But they never learn the skills required to create them. And so they keep repeating the same patterns. The same disappointments. The same heartbreaks. The same misunderstandings. Over and over again. Fromm believed that one reason love feels so difficult today is because modern society teaches us to consume. To acquire. To compare. To seek the next best option. And without realizing it, many people begin treating relationships the same way. People become products. Dating becomes shopping. Connection becomes evaluation. And love becomes something to obtain rather than something to create. Think about how often people ask, how can I find the perfect partner? But how rarely they ask, how can I become someone capable of loving deeply? This was the revolutionary question at the heart of Fromm's work. And it may explain why so many relationships struggle despite the endless advice, apps, books, and content available today. Because perhaps the problem isn't that there is less love in the world. Perhaps the problem is that fewer people understand what love actually is. And that brings us to one of Erich Fromm's most powerful ideas. An idea that completely transforms the way we think about relationships. Because in the next part of this conversation, we're going to explore why Fromm believed love is not a feeling at all. It's a skill. And that insight may completely change the way you see your relationships, and yourself. Erich Fromm believed that one of the greatest misunderstandings in human history is the way we think about love. Most people assume love is something that happens to them. A feeling. A spark. A coincidence. A matter of luck. You meet the right person. The chemistry appears. The relationship begins. And love simply unfolds. But Fromm challenged this entire idea. He believed that love is not something you fall into. Love is something you learn. Something you practice. Something you develop. In other words, love is an art. And every art requires mastery. Think about any skill that matters. Playing an instrument. Painting. Writing. Medicine. Psychology. No one expects excellence without practice. No one assumes mastery arrives automatically. Yet when it comes to love, many people believe feelings alone should be enough. And when relationships struggle, they conclude that they simply found the wrong person. Fromm thought this was one of the biggest mistakes people make. Because the question isn't, did I find the right person? The deeper question is, have I learned how to love? And according to Fromm, truly loving another human being requires 4 essential qualities. Care. Responsibility. Respect. And knowledge. These 4 pillars remain some of the most profound insights ever written about relationships. Let's begin with care. When we genuinely love something, we care for it. Not because we are forced to. Not because we expect something in return. Because its well-being matters to us. Imagine a gardener who says he loves flowers. But never waters them. Never protects them. Never pays attention to them. Would we believe him? Of course not. Love expresses itself through care. The same is true in relationships. Love is not merely saying I love you. Love is showing concern for another person's growth, happiness, health, and well-being. Real love asks, how are you doing? Are you okay? What do you need? And perhaps most importantly, how can I support your growth? This is very different from possession. Very different from dependency. Very different from control. Care is an active interest in another person's life. And that brings us to the second pillar. Responsibility. Now, this word is often misunderstood. Fromm did not mean obligation. He did not mean sacrificing yourself endlessly. He meant responsiveness. The ability to recognize another person's needs and respond with presence and attention. In healthy relationships, people do not ignore each other's emotional realities. They notice. They listen. They respond. When someone we love is hurting, responsibility invites us to be present. Not to fix everything. Not to control everything. But to care enough to show up. And today, perhaps more than ever, presence has become rare. Many people are physically together, but emotionally absent. Sharing a meal while looking at phones. Sitting beside each other while living in separate worlds. Listening without truly hearing. Responsibility, in Fromm's sense, means offering attention. And attention may be one of the greatest expressions of love. Then comes respect. And this is where many relationships quietly fail. Because people often confuse love with possession. They believe loving someone means having a claim over them. Controlling them. Changing them. Owning them. But Fromm strongly rejected this idea. Respect means seeing another person as they truly are. Not as an extension of yourself. Not as a project to fix. Not as someone who exists to fulfill your needs. Respect means recognizing another person's individuality, their freedom, their dreams, their unique path through life. Think about how many relationships begin with admiration, and then slowly become attempts to reshape the other person, to make them more convenient, more predictable, more comfortable, more like us. But love cannot thrive where freedom disappears. Fromm believed that real love supports growth. It does not suffocate it. And perhaps the most difficult pillar of all is the final one: knowledge. Because it is impossible to truly love someone we do not understand. Many people know facts about their partners. They know birthdays, favorite foods, movies, habits, preferences. But knowledge, in Fromm's sense, goes much deeper. It means understanding another person's fears, their wounds, their hopes, their insecurities, their dreams, their inner world. And this kind of knowledge requires curiosity, patience, empathy, vulnerability. It requires the willingness to see beyond appearances. Because every human being carries hidden struggles, hidden fears, hidden stories. And love grows when we take the time to understand them. Not judge them. Not correct them. Understand them. Perhaps this is why so many people feel unseen today. Because they are surrounded by people who know them superficially, but very few who truly understand them. And maybe you've experienced that feeling yourself. The feeling of being with someone yet still feeling alone. Being loved for what you provide, for how you appear, for the role you play, but not for who you truly are. Fromm believed that genuine love is one of the rarest achievements in human life precisely because it requires all four pillars working together: care, responsibility, respect, knowledge. Remove any one of them and something essential disappears. Without care, love becomes cold. Without responsibility, love becomes indifferent. Without respect, love becomes controlling. Without knowledge, love becomes shallow. And perhaps this explains why love feels so difficult today. Not because human beings are less capable of loving, but because real love demands far more than most of us were ever taught. And in the final part of this conversation, we're going to explore Fromm's most powerful insight of all: the difference between immature love and mature love. A distinction that may completely change how you understand relationships, heartbreak, attachment, and even self-love itself. And now we arrive at what may be Erich Fromm's most important insight. An idea that has the power to completely transform the way we think about relationships. Fromm believed there are two very different kinds of love: immature love and mature love. At first glance, they can look similar. Both involve attraction. Both involve affection. Both involve connection. But underneath the surface, they are fundamentally different experiences. Immature love says, "I love you because I need you." Mature love says, "I need you because I love you." The difference may seem subtle, but it changes everything. Think about it. Many people enter relationships carrying an invisible hope. The hope that someone else will finally fill the emptiness inside them. That someone else will heal their loneliness, their insecurity, their fear, their uncertainty, their lack of self-worth. And when this happens, love becomes a form of dependency. The relationship stops being about connection. It becomes about survival. The other person becomes responsible for your happiness, responsible for your emotional stability, responsible for making you feel valuable. And that is an impossible burden for any human being to carry. Because no relationship can permanently solve problems that exist within us. No partner can give us an identity. No partner can create self-worth on our behalf. No partner can permanently silence our insecurities. Yet many people unknowingly expect exactly that. And when the relationship fails to provide it, disappointment follows. Resentment follows. Conflict follows. Heartbreak follows. Fromm believed that mature love begins when two whole people choose to share their lives. Not because they are incomplete, but because they want to grow together. Not because they need saving, but because they want connection. Not because they are empty, but because they have something meaningful to give. This is why self-love plays such an important role in Fromm's philosophy. And here again, he challenged a common misconception. Many people hear the phrase self-love and think of self-esteem, confidence, positive thinking, self-care. But Fromm saw something deeper. He believed that the ability to love others and the ability to love ourselves are inseparable. In fact, he argued that people who genuinely love themselves are often more capable of loving others. Because they are not desperately seeking validation. They are not demanding constant reassurance. They are not using relationships to fill emotional voids. They can love freely. Without possession. Without manipulation. Without fear. And perhaps this is one of the reasons modern relationships struggle so much. Many people are searching for someone to complete them. But healthy relationships are not built by two halves becoming whole. They are built by two whole people choosing connection. This doesn't mean perfection. No one is perfectly healed. No one is completely free from insecurity. No one has life fully figured out. But mature love recognizes that personal growth remains our own responsibility. And that realization creates freedom. Freedom to love without controlling. Freedom to care without possessing. Freedom to connect without losing ourselves. Think about how often people mistake attachment for love. Jealousy for love. Possession for love. Obsession for love. Dependency for love. Fromm warned that these experiences often have very little to do with genuine love. Because real love expands freedom. It does not restrict it. Real love encourages growth. It does not fear it. Real love celebrates individuality. It does not erase it. And perhaps this is why truly loving someone is one of the most difficult things human beings can do. Not because love is mysterious, but because love requires maturity. It requires self-awareness. It requires courage. It requires discipline. It requires the willingness to care for another person without trying to own them. To understand another person without trying to control them. To support another person's growth without feeling threatened by it. And that is not easy. But according to Fromm, it is one of the most meaningful achievements available to us as human beings. Perhaps this is why love feels so difficult today. Not because there is less love in the world, but because we live in a culture that teaches consumption more than connection. Acquisition more than understanding. Attention more than presence. Performance more than intimacy. And yet the human heart continues searching for the same thing it has always searched for. Connection. Meaning. Belonging. Understanding. Love. Not the fantasy version. Not the movie version. Not the version built on dependency and fear. The real version. The version that requires courage. The version that requires growth. The version that asks us not only to be loved, but to learn how to love. And perhaps that is the greatest lesson Erich Fromm leaves us. Love is not something that happens to a lucky few. Love is not something we simply find. Love is something we practice. Something we cultivate. Something we become capable of through effort, understanding, and growth. If you've made it this far, I'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment below and tell me. What do you think is the biggest challenge facing relationships today? And what lesson from this conversation resonated with you the most? Read through the comments as well. You may discover that many people are asking the same questions you've been carrying for years. And if this conversation helped you understand yourself a little more deeply, subscribe to the Therapy Room. Here we explore psychology, emotional healing, philosophy, human behavior, relationships, personal growth, and the thinkers who continue helping us understand ourselves more deeply. Thank you for spending this time with me. And thank you, Erich Fromm, for reminding us that love is not merely a feeling. It is an art. And like every art, it is something we spend a lifetime learning. Until next time. Take care of yourself.